As important as the quality of your content is, when it comes to the business of OnlyFans, there's something that matters even more: the quality of your audience. Thirst traps and flash trends might rack up a few million views in the short term, but if 95% of those viewers are from third world countries with zero spending power, you're building a low-quality audience that converts poorly, wastes your chatter's time, and actively damages average LTV. So in this video, I'm going to explain everything you need to know about how to maximize your odds of building a high LTV, tier 1 audience of followers who have serious spending power and minimize your odds of a comment section that looks like this.
Fucking mother bloody fuck bitch!
I'm Francis, an OnlyFans marketing consultant who has produced millions of dollars, tens of millions of followers, and billions of views for my clients. And just about every consulting client I speak with these days has a huge problem with their audience demographics. Because this is such a universal issue, I wanted to explain why your audience demographics matter so much, plus the exact tactics I use to ensure that my clients have the best chances possible of cultivating that tier 1 audience. This channel is about all things related to OnlyFans marketing, from educational videos like this to podcasts with industry leaders with all kinds of expertise. I publish weekly, and it's all 100% free. So if you're a professional in the OnlyFans industry, please be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss any future content. Let's start with a little bit of math. Here's a chart of the top 20 countries by spend on OnlyFans for 2025. Of the $7.2 billion in revenue reported by OnlyFans for 2025, $6 billion came from this list. Let's take a closer look. When we open up that Instagram Insights page, we all intuitively know the audience composition we want to see. Countries like the United States, the UK, Canada, and most of Western and Northern Europe. And the reason is simple. These countries all have much higher average incomes, much higher predisposition to spend, and much higher relative purchasing power than anywhere else in the world, excluding China, which doesn't matter to us because OnlyFans is banned there. We call these tier 1 countries, and it's where virtually all of our revenue comes from. However, the unfortunate reality is the pesky Pareto principle, that 80% of outcomes are generated by 20% of a given population, and it very much holds true here. Only 20% of social media users come from these tier 1 regions, but the top 5 countries by total spend account for $4.1 billion, over half of all revenue generated by OF globally. The other 80% of social media users are from places in the world with comparatively much lower purchasing power: Latin America, India, North Africa, and so on. We typically call these nations the Third World or the Global South. Fun fact, the entire continent of South America spends less than half of what the United States does on OnlyFans on an annual basis. Now, you might look at this chart and say, but Francis, there are multiple Third World countries on there. Colombia, Thailand, Brazil, and India are all in the top 20. Well, that's true, but it's also misleading. Here's the same chart adjusted by the total population of these countries and ranked on a per capita spend basis. In other words, the extrapolated average LTV of each country. This paints a much clearer picture. India might spend $130 million a year on OnlyFans content, but that's an average spend of 9 cents per person, 85 times less than the $7.59 of the United States. This matters a ton because, say you have a model with 10,000 Instagram followers and 100% of those followers are from the US. In order to reach a 100% Indian audience with the same purchasing power, you would have to get that model to 850,000 followers, and you're competing for a much smaller slice of the proportional pie. On top of that, because they're spending so much less at an individual level, your chatters have to maintain 85 times the number of conversations, which dramatically increases your costs. Forget stepping over dollars to pick up pennies. That would be like stepping over dollars to pick up dog shit with your bare hands and eat it in front of Sydney Sweeney. All of this math is to say that the fundamental problem is that everyone on socials, not just OnlyFans models, are competing for the eyes, ears, and clicks of tier 1 audiences, and competition is more ferocious than ever. So how do we make sure our content reaches our desired audience? Luckily, we actually have quite a few tools and tactics to improve our odds. There are 2 levers that we can pull to cultivate a tier 1 audience: technical and tactical. Technical solutions are going to be the software and infrastructure you actually use to post, the things you need to put in place during account creation, and the actual posting and scheduling process. Tactical solutions are going to be the choices you make in the content itself, things like speaking English, pop culture references, and so on. We'll start with technical solutions because they're absolutely essential. Even if you apply the tactic side of the equation perfectly, without the correct technical configuration, the content you create is going to get served to Sanjay right alongside Mud Hut construction reels and whatever the Bollywood equivalent of Peaky Blinders edits is. But first, a quick message from our sponsor before we get into technicals. I guarantee your agency has at least one model with superstar potential.
She's got the looks, the attitude, the talent, and you know that with the right strategy, she could earn 6 or even 7 figures a month. But content that used to go viral isn't getting views anymore. Pages aren't growing how they should be, and you're tired of banging your head against the wall.
I can fix that for you. I've spent every day of the last 3 years helping OnlyFans creators meet their potential and make millions of dollars, tens of millions of followers, and billions of views through organic social. And now I'm offering those skills to you as a consultant. I will build your models a multi-million-dollar brand from scratch. And I'll give you the exact processes and frameworks I've used to take creators to the very top on OnlyFans.
If you've got a model you truly believe in, click the first link in the description, fill out my consulting questionnaire, and book your consult sooner rather than later. I only take on 3 clients a month, and spots fill up quick. Now, back to the video.
There are 2 factors at play when it comes to technical solutions: location and trust score. Location is where you are in the world, or more accurately, where the platform believes you are. This can be manipulated, but you have to be very careful about precisely how you manipulate it, because if anything looks suspicious, it will damage your trust score. Trust score is basically a hidden value that all social platforms assign your account based on the likelihood that you're a normal human being using the platform as intended. The lower your trust score, the more likely the platform believes that you're a bot, a spammer, or some other variety of bad faith actor, and the greater reduction in both overall reach and desirable demographics you will get. If you've ever played a MOBA like Dota 2 or League of Legends, this is a lot like your behavior score. The worse you act in your games, the longer your matchmaking queue time, and the more likely you are to be matched with other players who are also assholes. Trust score is based on a variety of factors, but the biggest one we can control is consistency, by which I mean, does it look like this account is being controlled by a single user in roughly the same geographical location at all times? Let's start with what you absolutely should not do. Obviously, ignore this if you're an independent creator, but if you're an OFM, model should have 0 access to the accounts OF promotional content is being posted on. This one might be controversial for some, but it's extremely important. Because trust score is based on consistency and the app registers your device type, location, and IP every time you log in and post, if you're posting from multiple locations or devices, the platform will flag your account for suspicious behavior. This can happen even if you're posting on the device that the account was created on, but in a different country. I figured this out the hard way. When I was managing, I had a model that traveled frequently, and every time she went on a trip and started posting stories, we took a massive hit to reach until she got back to the United States. There are many different options for posting: phone farms, scheduling apps, natively, VAs with proxies. Way too many to go through each in detail for this video. Personally, I prefer schedulers, specifically Metricool, because they route everything through the same IP using native platform APIs, which, in my experience, Instagram always clocks as a trustworthy user. If you use a scheduler, ideally you should post through it from day one. It's not the end of the world if you don't, but you might see a temporary reduction in overall reach if you switch from, say, phone farms to Metricool. Whatever method you are using, you should make it as foolproof as possible and use a single device to do all posting. You should also not use a VPN. VPNs do not have any impact on the audience you reach, full stop. If you're in Romania using a US VPN, you are not any more likely to reach a US audience, but you are likely to damage your trust score because just about every major VPN provider routes traffic through shared IPs that are almost certainly flagged by Instagram. The difference between VPNs and schedulers using shared IPs is that Instagram recognizes and approves most scheduling tools and has them whitelisted, whereas most people using a VPN are doing so to circumvent some sort of restriction or enhance privacy, which platforms typically recognize as suspicious behavior. Now for the do's. Post from the IP of the country that you want to reach. According to both Instagram's Help Center and the hundreds of agencies that I've spoken with on the matter, the most impactful thing you can do to increase the likelihood of reaching a desired audience is posting from the geography of that desired audience. Shocking, I know. This has always been easy for me because I spend most of my time in the States and all of my models were also in the States. Now, if you're not based in the US, you're going to have to get creative. The old-fashioned way would be to have contacts in the United States that are willing to create and manage the accounts, but this gets expensive very quickly if you don't have buddies willing to do it for you. There are a variety of proxy services where you can rent US static residential or mobile proxies, I no longer know who the most trustworthy or reliable IP service providers are these days, so I would encourage you to do some digging on your own and learn more about IP configuration. The most important thing is that you use only one IP per account, and you always use the same IP when you're posting from that account. Again, you can circumvent the need for this by simply creating the account on a US IP and then doing 100% of the posting through a scheduler like Metricool, and that is the only solution I can personally say works from experience. Another do, because it bears repeating, use a single device or a single scheduler. If you're using a scheduler, there's absolutely no upper bound on the number of accounts that you can connect. Everything gets routed through a whitelisted IP, and you have a ton of control and flexibility over the entire process, including permissioned access for VAs and other team members. If you haven't figured out the through line here, it's that if you are somebody like me who doesn't have the desire or the technical chops to buy a ton of Android phones with US SIM cards and run graphene or build a phone farm, draft SOPs for managing single IP posting across dozens or hundreds of accounts, and then hire a bunch of VAs to manage your posting, just use a scheduler. Again, I prefer Metricool. They aren't sponsoring this video, and I have no relationship or affiliation with them. It's just a great product that's super easy to use, and I truly have no idea why it's not industry standard at this point. I have a whole guide on how to use Metricool and other key OFM software here, and I'll also link it in the description. This is where things get a little more interesting and a little more nuanced. I'd use these tactics to cultivate as high as 50 to 70% tier 1 audiences consistently, but I think it's worth noting that while these work very well now, some of these might not be as effective in the future, depending on the platform changes. The reason they might change is that as of the recording of this video, Meta uses a powerful AI segmentation tool called computer vision to analyze and make determinations about your content. I'm not going to do a full technical breakdown, but essentially computer vision watches every piece of content uploaded to Instagram frame by frame to identify objects, text, and scenery, and categorize content. This is why niching is so important, and it's also why the algorithm is so good at identifying your geography and interests and serving content that matches both. All of the tactics I'm about to share work by manipulating computer vision to work for rather than against you. And generally speaking, the more of these manipulations you are able to jam into a given piece of content and stack on top of each other, the more likely that content is going to be served to the audience you actually want. I'm going to break these tactics into 3 buckets, and in each bucket, I'll explain what to do and what to avoid. The first bucket is sophistication. When I say sophistication, I don't mean how fancy your content is. I mean the level of relative intelligence that is required to understand and appreciate it. The best way to make content that third worlders don't watch is to make content third worlders don't understand. For example, I'm not a particularly smart guy, but if you don't have a high degree of fluency in English and a desire to learn about OFM, the odds of you finding, let alone watching my content start to finish, are very low. But language isn't the entire issue. If I put myself in the shoes of Pajit using Instagram like it's Pornhub, and I see a hot girl in a bikini making her ass cheeks clap for the camera, I don't care if she's speaking English or Martian. I got what I came for, and whatever words the content contains are more or less irrelevant. Hypersexual content is the single largest cause of negative demographic drift. Remember, 80% of social media users are people you don't want. You can't make content that broke third worlders can crank their hogs to, and then get upset when your audience is mostly broke third world masturbators. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, thirst traps and flash trends are not the way to build an audience. Yes, they will get short-term spikes in views and followership, but they also risk bans and suspensions. Plus, an overwhelming majority of those views and follows will be from people you do not want as customers. If we follow the math from earlier, Tier 1 audiences outweigh Tier 3 audiences by a factor of 1 to 85. If a single Tier 1 follower is worth 85 Indian followers, it stands to reason that we would much rather optimize content to reach that one person. On a relative LTV basis, a video with 12,000 views from a niched 100% Tier 1 audience is worth the same as a video with 1 million Indian views. 2 takeaways from that. 1, that's how meaningful it is to capture a majority Tier 1 audience. And 2, that means that a reduction in overall reach should not scare you as long as the demographic composition of that reach is desirable. I have worked with models with 300,000 Instagram followers making $500,000 a month because they understand this principle and they only care about reaching the best possible audience within their niche, rather than optimizing for following size. So what we want to do is create a barrier to entry for our content so that the level of sophistication of the content matches the level of sophistication of the audience we actually want. The easiest way to do this is language and text. Now, that doesn't mean that she has to do vector calculus on camera. We don't want to go overboard because, let's keep it a buck, even our tier 1 audiences are probably not very sophisticated either. I think a creator that strikes an incredible balance in her content is Lian Su Talks. Here is a great example.
I tried dating a necromancer. He just kept bringing up the past.
Obviously, the visual appeal here is the jiggle, but the crux of the content is that she's making a silly dad joke in English. A non-native English speaker is probably not going to know the word necromancer and therefore will not understand the joke. And if you look at the comments on this reel, there are vanishingly few Indians. Nearly every comment is in English, German, which is her country of origin, or Italian, another top 5 tier 1 country. Basically, all of her content follows this formula: jiggles and jokes, and as a consequence, she has built a tier 1 audience with the perfect level of sophistication. Just dumb enough that every average Joe in a tier 1 country will get the joke, but not so dumb as to appeal to an audience with a weak command of English. Also notice that all of her videos have captions. This is well understood by now, but computer vision recognizes English words and therefore will serve content with visible English words to English audiences. Captions are also more visually engaging. Just be mindful of placement and keep them small and tasteful. Oh, and I forgot to mention this in the technical section, but there's an Instagram feature called hidden words that allows you to automatically hide comments containing specific text. The algorithm pushes content to people similar to those who engage with it. So if your comments are full of sin bobs or foreign languages, the algorithm thinks this content is popular with this demographic and it finds more of them. Hidden words enables you to create a blacklist of words common to the demographics you want to avoid. I use it to block certain Hindi characters, certain emojis, slang from lower converting regions, and begging phrases like free, what's up, etc. So, a quick recap, since this was longer than I anticipated. Do's: experiment with the hidden words feature and see if it works for you. Have the model speak in the language of the audience that you want to reach. Include captions in the language of the audience you want to reach in every video. Optimize for niche and follower quality, not follower quantity. And don'ts: do not make thirst traps, flash trends, or other content that can be easily understood by undesirable audiences. Slop content equals slop audience. And don't get discouraged by reductions in reach. The right audience is significantly more impactful on revenue than the largest audience. Tactical bucket number 2 is signs, symbols, and shared cultural vernacular. Computer vision does more than just recognize text. It also recognizes symbols, logos, and so on. Now, if your model is in the US or whatever geo you're trying to reach, she can just film herself in settings that clearly indicate this. If she's in a major city like LA, New York, or so on, there are landmarks in those cities that clearly identify those places. Plus, location tagging can be an effective way to reinforce this, as geotagged content is very likely to be served to users in that geography. However, as is very often the case, let's assume you want a US audience, but your model is not in the United States. You can trick computer vision by including US products, symbols, and logos as elements in your content. A great example of this I saw recently, although I was not able to find the reel to include this in the video, is a Greek model that had a coffee mug with Target branding on it. For those who don't know, Target is an extremely popular US-only retail store. It's like a nicer, cleaner version of Walmart. It's a subtle, unobtrusive detail that doesn't take anything away from the content, but it increases the odds that she reaches a US audience by tricking computer vision. There are a million different implementations of this. The easiest way is to find popular region-specific brands, and you can even incorporate them in a way that makes it more convincing that the model lives in a specific part of the US. For instance, if you're trying to reach more blue-collar Southerners, Buc-ee's is a chain of gas stations in the Southeast with a cult following. If you're trying to reach people on the West Coast, In-N-Out is a popular burger chain that only exists on the West Coast. This tactic could just as easily apply to countries outside of the US too. What restaurants and shops are unique to and popular in France, Italy, the UK, Canada, and so on? The other element of this is what I call shared cultural vernacular, or SCV. And this applies as much to specific subcultures as it does to regions. The jargon, symbols, and memes that are unique to a niche. Every field of human interest has linguistic signposts that enthusiasts of that field can use to identify each other. And this is a surefire way to improve the likelihood that your model reaches not just the right geography, but the right segment of her niche. In World of Warcraft, parse refers to your performance ranking relative to the benchmark or average on certain fights. Only a person who plays World of Warcraft would immediately understand this term in that context. But if that's the audience you're trying to reach, and your model makes a video about her parse on a specific fight, that is guaranteed to only resonate with her exact target audience. Every niche and region of the world has little linguistic quirks like this, and it's your job to figure out what they are and leverage them. Tactical bucket 3 is audio. The last bucket is probably the simplest to understand and implement, so I'll keep it short. The music and sounds you use absolutely impact who you reach. You'll notice that creators like Camila Araujo have a huge Latin American audience. This is partially because she speaks Portuguese, but it's also because she uses Latin songs in a lot of her videos. The most popular of these is that Fuego Fuego song by Bad Bunny, who is the biggest artist in the Latin world right now. This is a conscious decision on her part. Her team knows that she has cultural cachet in that part of the world, and they're intentionally incorporating it into their business strategy. At one point, Camila even had a couple of pages where she does content in Portuguese. But if you use that exact same song for your creator, you will also likely attract a Latin American audience, and that might make absolutely no sense for your creator. Don't just use trending audio without thinking. If you see a Bollywood song in trending audio that has 100 million plays or whatever, understand where those viewers are likely coming from and the impact it's going to have on audience composition, especially if you use it repeatedly. The music that you choose for your model should match the audience that you want. If you're looking for middle-aged American blue-collar workers, old-school country music might do the trick. If you're looking for millennial soy boys, hit them with some late 90s indie rock. The more specific you're able to get, the more likely computer vision, or I guess in this case, computer hearing, will audience match you to the correct demographics. If you've been struggling with poor demographics on your model's pages, hopefully this video helped. If you made it all the way to the end, comment a topic you'd like me to cover in my next video. And if you haven't already liked the video and subscribed to the channel, I strongly recommend that you do so now because I have a ton of amazing content planned for 2026. If you're interested in hiring me as a consultant, be sure to click the first link in the description. Click the second link for your free copy of my OnlyFans brand blueprint workbook. Thank you for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next one.